World Needs a Little Talk is back for another episode, and this will be our last, The Watchmen. We have made it completely through, and you still are disgusted by the text.
I don't know about this.
I know, not disgusted.
Bewildered, for sure. Yeah. It's not my cup of tea. Yeah. It's very, it really is just full of despair, I think. I feel like some people consider the ending to be ambiguous, maybe.
Well, I also, it's kind of morally ambiguous and equally.
I would say it's just immoral, but yeah.
The ending is ambiguous because we don't know what, like, if they end up telling the rest of the world the truth, publicizing it, or if they don't. And
okay, so tell them about the last. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and then I remember.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll fill in. But I remember I saw a thing that said that he intentionally did that so that you, as the viewer, decide for yourself if it, like, what happens next if everyone finds out or not.
Okay.
But and that's
basically exposing Bait.
Yeah.
How do you say his last name?
I think Bait.
By
but
Ozymandias.
Yeah. So Ozymandias, we learn it was all him. He planned, set up the whole thing. He killed the comedian. He got Rorschach in jail. He intentionally shot Dr. Manhattan to Mars with the media blow up to get in his head. And
gave all the people cancer.
Yeah, he gave all those people cancer to set him up. He put a hit out on himself. That way it could look like that it wasn't him, since all the superheroes were being targeted.
By the way, how did he catch the bullets? What? Okay. At the end where Laurie shoots at him, he
catches the...
How'd he do that? Okay. Because he doesn't have... Anyway. I think it's supposed to be like he's trained in all these, like, martial arts or something.
There's not a martial art where you catch bullets.
Anyway.
He combined martial arts with science. That's what we'll go with. But
that was okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so then all of that comes out to just the rest of the superheroes, and he does all of this so that he can get away with dropping a giant squid that he created.
Looks very much like the bottom half of a woman's anatomy. By the way. I mean, like, Freud would look at that immediately and say, "Oh, well, that is a vagina."
Yeah. So that there's a reason that the two of them would. Maybe not. I think I don't know.
Two of who?
The Gibbons and Moore, because story-wise, there's no.
About this thing.
There's really no reason for it to be a.
Exactly. It shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be a vagina monster, but it is.
Yeah. So that's that's not. I don't think that's story pertinent. I think that's reflective of the two of them as creators. I think that's something they would have collaborated on and said, "Oh yeah," or at least either Moore would have said, "You got to make it look like that," or I don't know.
It's I mean, no one says that that's what it is, but it sure. I don't know.
It has to be intentional.
I don't think I have a dirty mind. I don't know if they can. Here.
Yeah. So he drops this giant monster on New York and kills 3 million people.
15, I think.
15 million. But either way, a large sum of people. And his whole goal in doing this was to prevent World War III and the end of times and cause the Russia and the United States to unite against a giant alien squid monster, which is not an alien, but he wanted it to appear that some foreign.
It's something that he's been able to develop through careful genetic manipulation. because of his brains.
Yeah.
And then it also weird. This whole thing was like, okay, there's this really stark realism all through this novel, and then at the end, it feels a little bit like jumping the shark to me, because now we've got this interdimensional thing. Well, I mean, they are capable of moving things through dimensions somehow, and he's developed it over the years, and it also has a brain that is somehow it's inherited from a psychic through their like genetic work, and they like turned up the psychicness on this monster, and they've programmed it to like send out this psychic communication, and that's what kills everyone, is this psychic communication.
Yeah.
At the end,
Not even. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people probably died from it. It's just being a giant-sized monster as well.
that's true.
But
I mean,
so that was the main.
I mean, it kind of lands in Madison Square Garden during a concert, I guess. So everybody in the concert is like crushed by it. Yeah. But that was the other thing, is like everybody who's killed by this thing that you see is bleeding. And I'm like, what's causing them to bleed here?
Artistic effect.
Okay. They want to make sure you know that they're dead. I don't know. I was like, what? So, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I have lots of questions, Austin. I don't.
It could be that psychic wave made them pop on the inside. But equally, I think it probably also could just be, artistic effect. We have the blood running progressively throughout the book until it completely covers the page and clock. So then this is the final pop that.
Well, in those panels, there is lots and lots of blood just dripping out of like Madison Square Garden and stuff. So maybe it was very. I can totally understand why Zack Snyder, when he made the film version of this, he's like, we're not using the vagina monster
because it's not needed. It's
so anyway, there you go. There is a lot of like, there's not a real positive view of sex in this. Like, Rorschach screwed up because of finding his mother with another man when he's a kid, and he's all like kind of, like, again, Freud would have a heyday with him, but everybody's got sexual hangups in this thing. I was thinking about this. This is another reason I don't like it. Okay, so there is not a single romantic relationship here that's healthy, really, except, I mean, maybe Night Owl and Lori at the very end.
You could say there's becomes healthy.
Sure. And I mean, we all have. I've been married nearly a quarter of a century now, and it has not always been wedded bliss, but we've gotten through it. And sure, you bring stuff to your relationships that is going to be fraught with peril and misunderstanding, and there's going to be fights, and you have to learn to fight well. That's really the key to a successful marriage, I think. But here, you don't have anybody who seems to be happy with each other. Nobody's normal in this book. I think that's the thing. It's like he just kind of assumes that everybody is an asshole, and that nobody's happy with each other. I mean, even okay. So the part going back to really what we're supposed to be talking about last week, the whole thing with the psychologist, that chapter is really important, I think. So where he's trying to analyze Rorschach, help him to recover while he's in prison, and then he's going home and you see his marriage falling apart, and his wife Austin is so weird, because she's like, I really need some sex right now, and I don't know. that it's just
I
unrealistic.
agree. It came off as weird.
It's very weird. Like all she really cares about, like that. I need to spend some time with you. I feel neglected. All that. You need to not bring your work home. I would have totally gotten this. She's like, I'm so horny, and if I can't get it from you, I'm gonna get it somewhere else. That's weird. I don't know. So everyone's got like some strange sexual hang up in here. And I think maybe that's also like the relationships aren't really they're not viewed as normal human relationships to which sexuality is a component.
Mhm.
It seems almost everything is about sex in some way, but it's not a celebration of sex though. I think it's a pretty cynical book about sex and anyway, I've been talking a lot.
Well, no, sex is kind of the avenue that we're told Dave's story in a way. We're like shown that he's become kind of a bum in a sense that he still has all this wealth and everything, but he doesn't do anything. When we first meet Dave, he goes and hangs out with Hollis. They drink. Dan, that's right. Sorry, my bad, Dan. But
Dan Dryberg.
He
Night out.
So he just goes, drinks with him, coming back, eats, doesn't really do anything with himself. And then when Lori comes along and is hanging out with him, we're getting the sense that he feels like he should do more, he needs to do more, but it's not until they try to have sex that anything comes out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He can't get it up, so he can't get an erection.
Sure.
And then we're shown it's the fact that he hasn't gone out and been a superhero in so long.
He has this thing. He's standing naked, looking at Archie, his owl machine, and he says something about feeling so impotent. This is where I'm like, okay, this is not very subtle, guys.
Yeah. Well, it's because then the two of them throw on their super suits, go break Rorschach out of prison, be superheroes.
Well, before that, they rescue the people in the fire.
Yeah.
And then he can.
Yeah. So the idea is that
I know
once he becomes a hero, then he can get it on.
It's like a little on the nose. It's not. Yeah. So that's all kind of bizarre to me, to be frank. And the way that whole relationship comes together just isn't. None of it feels natural. None of it's. Again, there's no emotion really that you can feel there's. It feels like they're using each other. And that's the most positive relationship in the book.
Do you feel like even in the ending, when we learn that they continue to be together, that it's still out of words using each other?
It feels better there. It feels better. It's still, I don't know, a little bizarre. But yeah, I don't know. There's so much other stuff there at the end that it's hard for me to. I mean, well, okay, here's the other thing. So after Ozymandias, they've solved the case, and I do like, by the way, the little twist where he tells them all his plan after it's they can't do anything about it. It's already done. So you get that little Bond villain moment where he just reveals everything he's been doing. But he's like, you don't think I'm such an idiot that I would tell you this before it's actually happened, right? And
do that, Rorschach? I'm not a comic book villain. Do you seriously think I'd explain my masterstroke to you if there were even the slightest possibility you could affect the outcome?
That's kind of, I like that they kind of explode that trope there. But, and then, everyone's shocked. And then they see all the news reports and they realize oh, this really did end forestall World War III. And they're like, oh, I guess he's right. And then their immediate response is, let's go have sex. It's just so, it's so weird. I don't,
Well, the world is saved. You got to celebrate.
it doesn't come off like that even. It's, she's like, I just seen 15 million dead people. Please do me. I don't know. It's just, anyway. Watchmen, folks.
Yeah, but everyone is everyone's okay with it except for Rorschach.
Yeah. Okay.
So then, we get Dr. Manhattan who says things gotta be the way they gotta be.
Yeah. Ozymandias actually like convinces him as well. That's the other like. So he's supposed to be like God with this perspective, transcendent perspective. Now that he, his time doesn't exist for him the same way and all this stuff. And he's like, oh, makes sense to me. That's also bizarre. But then so
so it makes sense to him. So then he's like, well, I gotta make sure it sticks with it. Because Rorschach is bent on revealing the truth and making sure the world knows what really happened and that this was all staged. So then Dr. Manhattan says,
blows him up.
Yeah.
And Rorschach kind of sees what he's like, tell him to go ahead and do it too. So it's
and he, for being so attached to his mask and being committed to that person, he rips it off.
That is interesting. Why he takes his mask off in that last moment,
but
he wants to die as I can't remember his name.
Something Kovacs.
Kovacs, yeah.
Kovacs. But it's
not as Rorschach.
But it shows that it.
Yeah, that's
kind of is revealing, like it's kind of like showing his humanity, being willing to say, I'm one of them too, or
I guess. So then, so Dr. Manhattan kills him. I think, do they all know he kills him?
I think they all know.
I mean, they gotta find out anyway. They go out and it's like,
there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
Rorschach bits everywhere. They're like, what happened here?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And I don't know. Everyone seems cool with it.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I liked better about the movie is, well, not only this, we know for sure that they know about it, but Night Owl witnesses it. And, we get that shot of him collapsing on his knees, screaming out.
Oh, yeah, I've forgotten about that.
Like, we see that in the movie he portrays what we're talking about. It's weird that they're all just like, at the end of the day, after like everything this has all been about, it's all revealed. They're like, but so I
got a point, Ozymandias.
Yeah. So I like it in the movie. It's not just oh, okay, good point, that worked. And then they're still torn up about it. Like they're torn on how to feel, what to do. And then we have this emotional reaction. Like Night Owl's like, no, like, and then that makes it even harder for him. And he's trying to juggle like, yes, this honestly did prevent World War III, meaning a lot more people live, but what was you still murdered so many to accomplish it?
Sure. So, man, so many things we could talk about here. Is Ozymandias the villain? Like in my book, he's a villain.
Yeah. I mean, I would say he's the villain of this story.
Okay. You think Alan Moore perceives him as the villain?
So I would argue Alan Moore does. I think he intentionally wrote him to be the villain of this story,
even though he ostensibly saves the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why is everyone cool with it? I mean, they're not cool with it, but they're like,
but
I don't know what we can do. I don't know.
which, I mean, yeah, what can you do?
Are they
It's already been
complicit
done.
then? Does this mean that are all of the costumed adventurers meant to be in the end, except for Rorschach, are they meant to be complicit in his crimes?
To an extent, you can say that they are complicit. I mean, as well, he doesn't reveal everything to them until it's too late. So it's not like they could have stopped that themselves. But what they could have
bring
done
them to justice
is, like Rorschach wanted to.
Yeah.
And they choose not to do that. So, and then in that extent, they are themselves guilty. If it does end up going public, if the world does learn the truth, then of course he's the main villain, he's the main guilt factor. But then if he actually is taken care of, he is brought to justice, well then probably a lot of people, especially how these people are portrayed, are gonna suddenly turn to these other masked adventurers and say, well, you knew about this and you didn't do anything.
And that could be coming anyway with of course, it's a crackpot journal that's going to publish this, the New Frontiersman. So the hard right fascist that it looks like they're going to publish Rorschach's journal.
There's the audience interpretation. It seems to me that they published that.
So I guess like everything for the most part is you get to the end and everything's almost like sunshine and roses. I don't know. I'm not sure he pictures Ozymandias as a villain. I feel like he's even meant to be ambiguous. Because at the end you see like this new world he's ushered in. There's peace. You see these panels showing New York City now after, and it's less crowded, there's less pollution, you don't have all the gangs.
Yeah.
Like there's peace now.
Well, I think
nobody's on edge, everybody's kind to each other, except for the guy working at the
so majority of this book, the opening, it's everything is, well, and especially through Rorschach's lens, everything is black and white. There's good, there's bad.
Right.
And I think that, I'm thinking he intentionally did that so that we get to the end and then he just opens up this box of, well, it's not, because look at the awful thing I did and look what came of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so and then it's not just New York City. I mean, Dan and Lori go and visit her mom, and here it's Christmas time, and you see these Christmas cards in front of her tree, and one of them has the Magi on it, peace on earth. Like, so this is like, yeah. And then they have this really. She reconciles with her mom, and it's lovely. And, she's like, yeah, I know that the guy who tried to rape you is really my father that you had an affair with. And everything's cool, which is also like, okay, so this is part of my problem with it as well. Okay, Austin, so Christianity, obviously, really, maybe the core of Christianity approaches, by the way, this is theology in British literature. We're doing this podcast as a part of this course.
Yeah.
So let's bring in a little theology here. So Christianity recognizes that God uses tragedy and even sin to bring about his purposes. So every Easter Vigil, we hear the deacon or the priest sing this poem. Is called the Exultet. It's praising the Easter candle, actually, and it has this line in it, Felix culpa, oh happy fault, about to paraphrase it, it's like, oh, happy fault of Adam that won for us such a redeemer. So Felix culpa is a really important doctrine, I think, of Christianity. That I always think about the story of Joseph and his brothers, where Joseph's brothers are mortified when they realize that this is Joseph whom they've sold into slavery at the end of the story, and they're trying to, like, they're really despairing of being able to be reconciled with him. And like, yeah, do with us as you will. And he's like, I'm not God. He says, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. Yeah, so that's an important doctrine of Christianity. This is almost a sort of twisting of that. So you have these people who are, it's almost like sometimes you have to do evil in order to bring about good, which is not what Christianity would ever say. Like you can never freely choose evil. Ends never justify means. So God will redeem our ends and our means and bring us to his goal of happiness for us in spite of ourselves. But that never means, oh, St. Paul talks about this. He says, oh, where sin increased, grace increased more. And he says, does that mean we should go around sinning so we can get more grace? And in Greek, it's really strong. Meganoit, no, by no means. Please don't do that. That's not the point here. If you're getting that message, you can misunderstand it. This is almost like, well, why don't we try that out? So, in some ways, I'm kind of sympathetic. This whole, okay, so Lori, for being conceived in this kind of convinces Dr. Manhattan, we should talk about this one too, that maybe humankind is worth saving because of the improbability that she would be conceived by two people, like the comedian and her mother, who had this, tried to rape her at one time. And so why should, that's just like crazy. So it must mean like she was meant to be born. There's some sort of, obviously God's not in this, but I don't know, a sort of, maybe the hand of fate, destiny, something, I don't know. And so he's like, you were meant to be born, and this is a miracle that this even happened. So I can all, like, that resonates with my worldview in some ways, but the way it comes off in the end is this sort of like, nobody's really completely evil and nobody's really completely good. And so even, a terrible monster like the comedian, is lovable. And I mean, one of the last panels, we see Sally kissing his picture, right? That's, and weeping over him that he's gone. This guy who tried to rape her. And I don't know, there's something weird and not right about that, I think. It doesn't feel right to me.
That's fair. In the story itself, it comes off like you're going through it. It feels weird, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I still I can agree with the sentiment that not everyone is fully good or fully bad.
Well, of course. But we still have we have a destination to which we are tending. Yeah. We're pointed towards righteousness, more or less, or we're pointed towards wickedness. And like in a given day, from moment to moment, my directional marker might be going astray. I might be tending towards wickedness at several points during the day.
But it's the classes where you curse more, right?
Right. How many F-bombs did Dr. Umbarger use? But so this seems to suggest that there isn't really a moral compass at all. Like, people just are what they are, and they hurt people, and sometimes they do nice things for people, and we have this sense of justice, like Rorschach. But like, if you're like Rorschach and you do think that there is right and there is wrong, well, you're probably gonna get blowed up in the end. I don't know, and you're gonna be really messed up psychologically.
Yeah. I don't like that part of it, but I like the idea of forgiveness and that of how important that is.
And do you think that's here? Do you see this about?
That's what I see from Sally and the comedian.
Which she's forgiven him.
Yeah, I think for the way that she misses him, the way that she was able to go past that so quickly, is that she's forgiven him. Which
I'm not sure I'm there with you. And this raises important questions about, like, what is forgiveness? This would be something that I would probably argue with Kelly McFall about a little bit. I think we have different ideas, maybe, of forgiveness. And I might not be doing justice to him, but I think for him, I'm thinking about our course that we taught on the Holocaust that you've been in. Forgiveness is about acting as though the hurt that people did to you, you just kind of like let go of that, right? And you don't acknowledge it even. And I think forgiveness is deeper than that. I think forgiveness is actually it's loving the person who has hurt you and willing good for them, like blessing them in your heart. I hope that good happens to them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I relate to them differently. So I'm releasing them from this curse. I want God's justice to fall on them. I'm releasing them from that. And more importantly, perhaps, I'm releasing myself from bearing ill will towards them, so that I can move on from this and begin the process of healing. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to expose myself to more harm from that person, or to not bring them to justice if justice needs to be done, or that I'm not going to, let's say, try to think of a good example, or let's say, I'm not going to recommend them, to be in a place where they can harm others. So there's a sort of responsibility that remains. Like, forgiveness isn't, looking at everything with rose-colored glasses.
I was going to say that forgiveness has to happen at a spiritual level.
Yeah.
It has to be a change within yourself, because a lot of people can turn it off, shut it down, forget about it, lock it away. But if you do that, it's not actually gone. You're just like, think of, a lockbox in your mind. You're just putting it away, closing the lid, right?
Right.
So then you're just causing yourself more harm at that point, because you're letting it still sit in your head, and then it'll fester.
Exactly.
And like a wound you don't take care of, like a virus, that it will just grow, and then you're hurting yourself. You're blaming yourself when you do it that way. And
So that's a good point.
Because a lot of people, will just say, "No, I'm past it. I'm forgiven, and I'm good,"
And they haven't.
and they haven't.
You're right.
And then you see that blow up, and
Yep.
they turn, like, at one point they turn on that person. They say something spiteful. It gets nasty, and you're like, "Well, clearly you never got past that."
Right. So I guess what the only thing I would add to that is I think like everything you said there is really lovely. And I think this gets maybe to the heart of where maybe my disagreement with follows. I don't think that forgiveness and reconciliation are necessarily bound up with each other. I think the goal of all our relationships is to work towards reconciliation. That doesn't always depend on me. But just because I can't have reconciliation with someone doesn't mean that I can't forgive them.
Yeah. Well,
And
because
there are people in my life that I will never be reconciled to. I've had to become reconciled to that.
yeah,
And some of that's kind of painful. I bless them. I'm trying to forgive them, working on forgiving them. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to invite them to Thanksgiving dinner next year. You see what I mean?
yeah,
Maybe in the world to come. I hope that. I can genuinely hope for that. But the way things are in this life, it's just not a possibility.
yeah,
Unless there's like some miraculous. Well, I mean, some of these people even I'm thinking of, have gone on to the world. I mean, they've already passed from this life. So that's the nature of our life and our relationships in this sinful world. So this is interesting. You're thinking that she has had that kind of forgiveness towards him. But okay. So there are a couple of things here. Okay. So first of all, that this manifests itself in this affair. Okay, which is which she's already married to this other guy, and then she seems to have. It doesn't give us the details of when and where this happened, but anyway, this results in Lori's conception. So the circumstances of this are already immoral, but then apart from that, after there's the scene where the comedian, we think that he's hitting on Lori because he's a scumbag like that.
yeah,
But he's actually trying to have a conversation with her because he knows
that
he's
yeah.
And Sally like loses her crap and says, "I never want you, like, stay away from her, never talk to her." So that kind of flies in the face of the forgiveness theory. I don't know. It seems really complicated.
Yeah.
Well,
as equally as this tries to make everything, I think it wants to show that things are complicated.
Yeah, everything in the Watchmen is complicated.
But so I will say that
I keep calling it the Watchmen. I guess it's just Watchmen.
I think there's two. It's either that she does reach forgiveness, or the complete opposite. This toxic man has gotten her head and is manipulative, and even in his death still has his finger around her, and which with everything this is, that's what I thought the whole time. That seems more likely.
Yeah, I think so.
But equally, you still can see this idea based off of the way that the end of the novel did spun everything else on its head.
Yeah, I think it's what you just said.
Yeah,
more.
It probably is this one, but it could go either way. I like to smile at the end of my day, so maybe that's why I'm over here.
I think she's like, she likes attention, even
that is shown. That
Yeah.
is like
even negative attention, I think. So, I mean, you have the little interview, the excerpt from the magazine where they ask her about it, and she's like, well, maybe that was kind of my fault too. And then, and this is a thing, I think, that sometimes victims of sexual abuse often take on that sort of responsibility. I mean, this is well known. So she has that kind of, that broken, damaged mindset. You see this with I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but someone sends her the Tijuana Bible, and she's flattered by it instead of creeped out by this. And then you have that comes up at the end too, where she gives it to her daughter's lover as a Christmas gift. Like that's so here, yeah, you can have this pornographic magazine that features me as it's that's it's just bizarre. And he's like, I had one of these when I was a kid, and I was trying to figure out like how old was he when in 1952? If he's got like he was like 10 years old.
A young kid.
Yeah. So which anyway, sex. That's the Watchmen. Watchmen. Sorry. We have like 2 minutes before I need to go.
All right. Well,
one couple things we should say really quickly at the end is it was weird to me how, as bizarre as it all is, it kind of winds up lining up with evangelical apocalyptic ideas really weirdly at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the anxieties, if you look at any kind of like evangelical end of the world timeline, and many Catholics do this too, is this anxiety that there will be a one world government. And at the end, you have a one world government that comes about because of this big vagina monster. Like that's not how anybody thinks that's going to come. Yeah. That's it achieves that goal. There's, I don't know. Ozymandias is a sort of maybe antichrist figure in a way. Although, everybody, looks up to him, respects him. He brings peace to the world. So I think you could see it in those sorts of terms.
Yeah, but he brings peace by killing 15 million people. Yes, he brought peace, but he's still a murderer who killed 15 million people.
And then you have the other kind of antichrist figure is Dr. Manhattan, who calls himself, basically he acknowledges that he is God in some sense, because he's going to go off. He's like, now I feel a little bit better about humanity, so I'm going to go off and make some humans. So he has this hubris that he's going to create his own world.
Create another humanity. Yeah, this has a very utilitarian.
How so?
Well, it's okay that you murdered 15 million people because you saved the other people, right?
Yeah, I think that's a maybe. Yeah, if there's one kind of philosophical worldview at play here, maybe utilitarianism is the major one. Yeah, that's a good observation.
Yeah, so it aligns with that pretty well.
It's hard to know whether they think it's a good. I don't know. It's easy to see how it could maybe not be portrayed in a positive light, but then there's also it's ambiguous. It seems ambiguous on purpose.
Yeah.
So anyway, Watchmen.
So Watchmen. This is the last we're talking about. So the last thing we could say is, do you overall aren't happy with it? Are you glad you read it?
Yeah, I'm glad I read it.
Good.
And I was just thinking about, people talk about great books, what makes a book great, and it's because it's the sort of thing that people you read it and you don't just like throw it down. You talk about it afterwards. So here we're having, we filled up a bunch of minutes discussing this already. So there is some aspect of greatness here. Now, I don't think it'll be like, this isn't gonna be like Homer's Iliad. In thousands of years from now, we're not gonna be reading this. I don't think. I don't think it's like Charles Dickens. I don't think they're gonna be reading it a couple hundred years from now.
Yeah.
Personally, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my take.
Yeah, they won't be reading it. They'll be watching it inside of their heads. Of the sci-fi chip is in there.
It would be transmitted to them psychically.
Yeah.
Other than Dias. Okay. What time is it? I know it's okay. This is one last word. Okay. I thought this was interesting.
Okay.
So one of the things that the psychic vagina monster does at the end is transmits all of these pieces of art into people's minds. It projects them. Did you get that? So you have all these artists on this island. One of them who is a comic book writer. Okay. And then another one is a surrealist artist. And then you have somebody who writes science fiction. And then you had what else? Had a couple sign, but anyway, he has these people who produce, I would say, like creepy art. That's the whole point. And he has them there with the purpose so that all of these pieces of art will be just kind of like psychically transmitted into their minds and drive them crazy. Okay. And I was wondering, like, again, this seems a little meta. So I think part of the purpose of this is to like disturb you and upset you, like, so I'm thinking about that, like,
well, because if he was a good guy that said, I'm killing these people to save everyone else, then he could gather up these artists, but then do calming, happy to make these people's deaths easier for them, and that they go but he doesn't do that.
He gives them art like Watchmen. Okay, I don't know,
like the Rorschach tests that Rorschach sees.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's another.
That was good. That was a good observation.
Like, I don't know, the role of in some ways this is also about art, and I mean, he doesn't deny that art can actually mess you up, and this is during the time in the 80s. Good grief, we were so paranoid about the violence on TV. I mean, we were convinced that our youth were just going to become crazy animals because they were watching violent cartoons and stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, people were honest to goodness worried about those sorts of things. And he's like, oh yeah, maybe I'll write a comic book about that. It's full of that stuff. I don't know. It's just bizarre. Anyway.
Hand this out to.
He doesn't argue with it. He takes that as sort of a possibility. And so interesting.
Yeah. Maybe he went to, public playgrounds, started handing copies out to kids.
Hey kid, you want to read Watchmen? This'll fuck you. That's closing it out was kind of weird.